to watching a video of people being, taken into that prison. And else,
this
I'm
is
coming,
really important. This
from
conversation
with
is great
that,
to have.
I
I'm so glad he did
don't
this.
know
I'm so glad Ethan did
if
this.
there is.
Anyway, speaking of petulant children, let's go and watch a lecture that is currently taking place on the H3 podcast. My former podcast co-host is talking to Sam Seder. Anyway, Sam is on. Let's take a look.
Sam Seder, what a nightmare.
How have you been, Sam, since we ruined Steven Crowder's life together? Nice to see you again.
I've been feeling very badly for him.
Yes,
over
we're
the years.
all. It's a tragic loss of a great career and so much potential.
Yes, it is. Hey, are we live now?
We are live on the H3 channel, yes.
I want to just start by sort of apologizing in that I sent you a DM on Twitter 6 months ago or something. I was just going through to find out, and then I just realized you're no longer on Twitter.
Yeah.
So that
He
explains
say what,
why
Dan?
Is on go in his chat? What do you mean?
He may no. Yeah, I didn't see it. I wish I would have, but honestly,
What do you mean?
I don't know what to do because I want to get off Twitter, but also it's kind of a pain because Twitter is the way that I would reach out and speak to most people. But I also don't want to be on a platform that's owned and perpetuates basically Nazi
Why would
shit,
I go in his chat?
Yeah, this was yes, I understand that.
Yeah,
but I just wanted you to know I did reach out, and it was on me not to realize that. I just assumed you didn't want to respond, but
okay, well,
me.
That's nice to know that you reached out. I appreciate that. And the reason, I mean, obviously, people have been pushing for this conversation. I don't know if you know the whole lore of it, the background of it.
I don't. I mean, this is all I know is that Hasan reached out to me sometime. I mean, I got in touch with you October 24th, and I said that I was meaning to reach out for a couple of weeks. So I assume it was sometime in early October, and my thought we were just going to do this off air, but
That's what I wanted.
My
I was
understanding
talk to him
is that you and he were getting into it, and you felt like because he wasn't Jewish, he didn't have a perspective on this, and that's why he suggested that you speak to me. I don't speak for all Jews, just to be clear.
Right.
I speak for only myself as a in any form.
Well,
whatsoever.
Sam, allow me to speak for all Jews, if I may, today.
Please.
No, actually, I mean, that's a total mischaracterization, which is kind of my problem with Hasan, which we can get into if you want. We don't even have to talk about Hasan. But basically, what I told him was that I was citing polling data that shows that about 70 to 80% of diaspora Jews
he's gonna cook
have
him.
some kind of positive feelings
Sam
towards
is
the
gonna
state
cook
of
his
Israel.
ass. He's gonna
And
be like,
he
that's
was
faulty
disagreeing
data.
with
It's
me.
bullshit.
I mean, this is available by polls, readily available by Pew Research just last month, showing that. And I have, I don't know if you're quite,
he's gonna
if you
say,
agree with
that's
that
just
or not. I can pull it up,
American Jews saying Israel's important to them. Israel's important to me, but that doesn't mean that I like Israel.
At least positive feelings about the state of Israel. I was stating that fact to him, and he was saying that I was wrong.
That is just a
and I said,
question
who are you to
answered
talk about
by
this? I did not say
diaspora Jews about
only
whether
listen to
Israel is
Jewish
important to them
people,
or not. That doesn't
which is
mean
a
that they're
little bit
Zionists.
presumptuous and a
Israel's
little
important to
I
me
don't
in my
think
life as well.
That's not what I took him to say, but yeah, I mean, Hasan is that's irrelevant to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that I haven't seen that poll. I've seen ones that have said that they have a connection. They feel a connection, either strong or somewhat.
Yeah.
Which is different than positive per se.
So
but regardless, I mean, I think if I don't know your upbringing at all, but I mean certainly my upbringing, my Hebrew education was, I would say, 1/3 Holocaust, and I'm older, and so this was in the 70s. 1/3 into the 80s, 1/3 Holocaust, 1/3 Israel, 1/3 Hebrew, Hebrew and Jewish culture. And I certainly feel a strong connection to Israel, but I wouldn't call it positive these days.
Sure. I think what the poll attempts to is basically, if you ask Hasan or a lot of people on the left, I think an emotional attachment is the way to describe this. So it's like if you think
I
it's
certainly have an emotional attachment, and it's not, but it's not. I wouldn't describe it as positive.
This isn't the one, is it, Dan?
There's
one that shows 73%.
Dude, he's saying just because you have an attachment to Israel doesn't mean
anyway,
that
it doesn't
a
really
Zionist.
matter. Regardless, basically, I want to flesh out my ideas, my thoughts, because I'm being characterized by Hasan and a lot of his cohorts as being, a Zionist, being pro-Israel, being a Israel apologist, being a genocide supporter, being a baby killer, being married to a baby killer, et cetera, right? My wife is Israeli. I don't know if you know that. So basically, I would like to just take the opportunity to explain my ideas, what I think about Israel, and you can tell me what you think, because apparently I will only listen to other Jewish people. So finally, I can speak to someone whose opinion matters to me. So thank you, as the official sanctioned Jewish man, Sam Seder, everybody.
No one said that.
100% Ashkenazi?
That is also a mischaracterization. He has
I haven't
lived experience,
but
and I'm
quite sure I have some Sephardic Jewish ancestry too. So I would mix.
That's good.
Vilnius and Hungary, I think.
Good for you. I think that's always a good thing. My friend, I'm 99.3%, so that's my.
All right,
that's where my authority comes from.
I'll take your word for it.
So at any rate, let me start here by showing you a little context.
Oh, let me also just say, I got about an hour.
Okay, great.
Get home.
I'll just get into it then. Here it is.
Not enough. That's not enough time, matters, Uncle.
Okay, whatever. So let's start here. Let's start with a little icebreaker here. I know we're both fans of Tim Pool. Okay, let's just enjoy this image together. Tim Pool recently at a wedding.
Wait, what?
And can you see? Can you see that?
Did he get married?
Well, I think he's attending a wedding.
Okay.
And he's very formally
stalling?
dressed, except he appears to be wearing a beanie.
I would. I'm aware of his beanie attachment.
Bro!
So I don't know.
Why are you filibustering the conversation?
Fine look for our good friend Tim Pool there. Very good.
Nice suit.
Yeah. So well, let me ask you this: what have you kind of like heard about me? Because I mean, I know that your colleagues have an opinion.
I got to be honest with you. I have not heard much. I have, like, the only thing I really saw that came up in any of my mentions on Blue Sky, I'm also on Blue Sky, is just this issue about talking to me, and I had presumed that was it. But I don't, look, from my perspective, I'm not, and I know that there's been, you mentioned in the email that there's been a lot of grief that you have taken, and I know that other people have also taken grief on all sides of this. And the personal aspects of this, and I don't believe that people. I don't actively attempt to deplatform people. I don't think people should do that. I don't think people should be swatted.
This is not going well.
Try to be fired or whatever, or have CPS sicked on them or any of that. I mean, I just don't think that's appropriate. I mean, I'm more interested in talking about my relationship to Zionism and my perspective on what Israel is doing, and what is happening in Gaza. And
I totally agree. Let's just talk about the facts. Let me start by showing you this clip. So I've been actually talking about my feelings on the Israel-Gaza Palestinian dispute
He's gonna present
situation
himself
for
as like
a long time. I lived in Israel for 5 years as well when I was
knowing
with my
full well
wife
that
early
Sam
on.
doesn't know the full scope
Here's my
of his
position
perspective.
right after October 7th. And you can tell me if you have any... if you have any comments on any of my positions here, but this was posted on. This was from our episode a few days after October 7th. He's going to showcase
himself as like, pro-Palestinian unconditionally.
Liars and bad faith weirdos. So here's what I'll say about Israel, okay? Listen, this isn't the first time I've said it, and I'll say it many more times. The cabinet is run by genocidal maniacs, okay? They're led by Netanyahu, who should resign in disgrace and go to prison for being a war criminal, okay? He's made a coalition of the most like radically conservative freaks that don't represent, by the way, the majority of Israelis. And they're hell-bent on genocide, frankly, overtly. They've committed tons of war crimes in Gaza, including the killing of children, obviously, because Gaza is one of the most densely populated places in the world.
I wonder what this background is.
50% of the residents are under 18, so when you bomb a building,
I wonder
the chances that
what the background of this show is that he's on, where he's saying these things.
Okay, it's barbaric, it's unacceptable, it's disgusting.
What is chat saying?
I've seen videos, I saw videos of Palestinian dads holding his dead like 5-year-old daughter.
La, la, la. I was there for this conversation. I know all of this.
I don't need to watch this part because it just gets a little too emotional. This is precisely that was my take right after. This is
precisely the reason why I literally thought Ethan was with the cause for the longest time.
Like I'm an Israeli citizen. The morning of October 7th, me and my wife were up at 3 a.m. as families were calling into news stations from their safe houses, people being burned alive with their families being murdered while on the phone with news. So coming off of that emotional,
he's so brave. Thank you, Ethan, for saying Palestinians are humans and Israel is doing a genocide even after October 7th.
My reaction. Now, I don't know if there's something Zionist or pro-Israel I said there, but maybe I don't understand.
I mean, I think much of what you said was true. I'm not sure, frankly, if what we've seen Israel do in terms of Gaza is not broadly supported in Israel. I'm not seeing the body politic. I mean, I was doing a lot of interviews with Israeli reporters earlier in 2023 about the protests against what Netanyahu was doing with the judiciary. And there was a question as to whether Israelis would.
He's going to say Sam agrees with me and he hates you because you're anti-Semitic. That's like his goal here is to be like, why have you called me a Zionist when Sam believes that I'm not?
Places like the West Bank and in Gaza in some fashion, and more so the West Bank at that time. And so I think it's hard to make an argument. And look, I would make it's not a perfect analogy as to what's happening in this country, but when you talk about the Israeli population not having a problem with what's going on in Gaza, I don't see a lot of evidence of that. There's certainly, I would imagine, a percentage of Israelis, and I know some of them who think that Israel should stop its assault there, but I don't think I don't see a lot of evidence that a year and a half later, after you said those things,
since then, so it's like disingenuous for him to present that.
This is not the character of the vast majority of Israeli society. I mean, I'm not necessarily convinced that they are as aware. I mean, I've talked to people who have reported in the West Bank, and they said they would go from the West Bank into Israel, and the lack of awareness of what was happening in the West Bank by Israelis was shocking to them. So, I can't say if the Israeli population had a full understanding of what was happening in Gaza, that they wouldn't change their mind. But I don't see a lot of evidence of it.
So as you touched on, this was made basically before the war started. And I think that the unfortunate, really tragic outcome of the war is how much it's jaded
it's not a war, it's
and
a genocide.
radicalized, I think, people in Israel.
It's not just Benjamin Netanyahu,
it's really,
it's Zionism.
I think people in Israel feel like isolated. They feel like, I mean, the sentiment in Israel is basically that the world wants, you know, the country to disappear, and and obviously, like that's a much more nuanced conversation. But the feeling there has definitely radicalized a lot since the war started. It's gotten a lot worse.
Not a war, it's a genocide.
And I think, I mean, I think that gets to it to some extent. I mean, you have this wholesale slaughter. You know, I was looking up. We killed in Iraq. You know, depending on what numbers you want to look at, but you know, I think it's safe to say directly hundreds of thousands of people. But even like the number of children that we killed in Iraq, I think has been surpassed by what's happened in Gaza. And I think one of the things that I find shocking is that the sense and look, I experienced this with family members. Where the sense that there's a victimization, for instance, let's say on college campus of Jewish students, and I think that to look at what's going on, the totality of what's going on, and to perceive the victims of what's happening here to be the Israeli citizenry or Jews in this country, I think it just blows my mind. I mean,
well, two people can care about two things at once. Why should people?
Oh, absolutely.
People
absolutely.
People who are uninvolved in the war, if they're being like victimized in a separate situation because of their Jewish identity, that's a problem, don't you think?
Oh, I do, but
and you can care about two things. You can't be like, oh, these people are ridiculous for caring about anti-Semitism on college campuses because the war's happening. I mean, you know, both we can care about two things.
100%.
And obviously, one is way worse, right? One is way worse.
But that's the point. I mean, one is way worse, and what's happening in Gaza.
But who should tolerate being discriminated against based on their identity? You know what I mean? Like, of course, who wouldn't react to that?
I don't think that people are. I don't think that people are being victimized. I mean, certainly, listen, anti-Semitism is real. It was real when I was a kid. There was many times I had pennies thrown at me growing up and playing basketball. I mean, there was a lot of. I've experienced anti-Semitism, but put it in the context of
which I agree with.
You're a parent, I'm a parent. You know, if my kid is going through something very difficult, it's obviously difficult for me, but it's more difficult for them. And it's a question of prioritizing these things. You can have two thoughts in your head at the same time, but to center oneself or to perceive that one's victimization is sufficient to ignore the
I got to stop you because I don't think I don't know who's doing that.
Well, I mean, I just said like you just presented as the Israeli population feels like they're isolated and this and that.
There's two different separate conversations. There's like the American Jewry who's like, I have nothing to do with that place, and then the Israelis, right? So like when you're talking about
in terms of the way that you characterized the Israeli feeling, was that they feel isolated, et cetera, and I can understand that, but to not have the first thought of like, we are
Sam will not let Ethan talk.
Committing, like you say, genocidal acts. And if people want to call it genocide, I don't, obviously it's got to be, it's a legal term, but I think that it's colloquially speaking, at the very least, it is a genocide. And to not recognize that as the fundamental issue, the first issue, I think is blinkered. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, it's a little gobsmacking to me.
Well, so I do agree with you that obviously in Israel, people, I think the problem, and just to say on a higher level, I agree with you. Like obviously the people in Israel compared to like what's on October 7th, they were victims.
That Ethan is being
after
narcissistic
everything that's happened,
for
obviously,
centering himself in this conversation about how he has been victimized as though he's the biggest victim of this entire genocide
of civilians in Gaza and what's happening in the West Bank too. Lots of awful stuff. That being said, I think the problem.
But he's trying to
Israel,
serve it to
just
Ethan.
to try to explain what's happening there, because I do agree with you, is just like the media apparatus and the feeling that they have there. It's like there's not a lot of space emotionally, and like even the information that they're consuming, I think that would allow them to have that kind of like self-realization. And like you said, a lot of Israelis don't know what's happening
there are
necessarily.
some. I mean,
There's some.
I'm
Yeah, of
so
course there's some.
sorry.
You know,
They're
we,
just simply
what
little
was
old,
it? In the
little
fall,
old, most
you had the
powerful
publisher
country in the
Haaretz,
region, and its citizenry that's
you know,
championing
speaking
the
out was going on
cost
there.
of children.
And the paper was essentially, you know, a cutout, or there was an attempt by the government to basically shut them down.
He moved on from him being the victim to
some
Israelis
extent. I mean,
being
so-
the victims.
Well, so
of
what's
this
your
war.
explanation
I-
why Israelis don't care? It's not that they're evil, right?
Well, I think, look, there's, I'm sure that there is a mass, you know, sort of like a failure to deal with trauma. I think some of it is, frankly, is racism, and I think, you know, how can you explain, you know, how can I explain how I just watched a clip of people at a Trump rally chanting USA, USA, to watching a video of people
Yes!
being, you know,
That's my point!
taken into that prison
Exactly!
in El Salvador and having their heads I mean, I don't know how I can
Uncle's driving
explain
it
that.
home.
So I don't know how I could explain
It's the same
how
exact-
the Israelis are able to the extent that they can see what's going on in Gaza, have that reaction.
I'm gonna
But I
rip my
know that
freaking
it's
shirt
wrong.
off.
And I think, you know, some of it undoubtedly is a racism. Some
Oh,
of it
man,
is,
Sam
you
is
know, maybe
losing
some
me.
type of mass failure
so
to deal
confused.
with trauma. I mean, I don't know all those things. I think, you know, part of it, I think there's some of the makeup of, you know, immigrants to Israel over
Oh,
the
God,
past
he's gonna do the Russian
several
point.
decades. I'm sure all of that enters into it.
We had
And
this conversation before
I'm not in a
on
position
my
to
stream
sort of
where he
like
said
be
this
able
as
to
well. He said it's
psychoanalyze it
Russians.
beyond the sort of, you know, vague notions.
Sure.
But
Yeah, and I
from
agree.
my
Yeah.
perspective, it's gobsmacking. And you know, to me, it has shown, and you know,
Of course,
I
I know
never
him very well.
identified myself as a Zionist as a kid, or you know, through the years, and I never identified myself as an anti-Zionist. I don't think I, you know, I think those it wasn't really until someone heard me articulate my perspective on this that they referred to me as anti-Zionist, and I have, you know, I don't really care that one way or another how I'm labeled, but to me, it shows a failure of that system of government that Israel has.
It's Zionism. That is the
It
problem.
has failed both
And Ethan will
from
never
a perspective
reconcile
of,
that.
you know, what I think some people had as a notion of Zionism in the
Hannah Arendt.
19th
He's going to
century.
bring up Hannah Arendt.
It has been a failure in terms of keeping Jews safe, frankly. It seems to have been a massive failure. And so I can't operate as someone who lives in Israel, but I can operate as someone who is an American in terms of like what we support, which is why I think we should end all aid. And as a Jew who sees my religion being used as what I perceive as a fig leaf for what Israelis or, you know, Zionists are doing. And so, I mean, that's where
This
I'm
is
coming
really important. This
from with
conversation is
this,
great
that
to have. I'm so glad
I
he did
don't
this.
know
I'm so glad Ethan did
if
this.
there is a psychological state that can justify this.
Oh, no,
In
they're
fact,
too stupid to understand it, though.
I don't think there is. And so, you know,
It's just an attempt to understand, not justify. Because I mean, it is what it is, right? Like it is the way that it is, and so that's for a reason. And it's just, it's just trying to explain it. That's all. I agree with everything you're saying. But actually, one thing I want to pivot to and ask you about.
Do you think that we should cut all aid to Israel?
I think that'd be justifiable. Yeah.
And I
well,
mean,
we're talking about like military and stuff. Yeah, for sure. Israel.
I mean,
Israel can make their own bombs and shit.
Every
if they need, like, they don't need American military.
Yes,
yeah, I agree with you on that.
I think they do need it to do what they're doing, without a doubt.
They do.
And
Well, what I mean is they're not entitled to it, to say more accurately.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think military aid should be cut for sure until.
how, as a Jew, and you know, I mean, obviously you have a different connection to Israel than I do, as you know, through your family and whatnot, and through having lived there. But as a Jew,
Holy
you know,
Ethan W. They're so
I-
desperate for
I
Ethan to
take
come across
such
as even
offense
remotely
to what is being done
anti-Zionist.
ostensibly to protect me and my family and my ancestors and my progeny and all of it. It is. I mean, I think it's. I think the conflation of Zionism and Judaism is both not keeping Jews safe and is wrong at its core. And we can see what it's even doing in the context of this country, the way that it's enabled Trump and to attack universities and to attack law firms and whatever. And so I don't know.
By the way, I think Ethan is in agreement with Sam here.
Great.
He's
not,
walking back a lot of his
happy to,
positions,
discuss
but
it
I don't
with
think Gila is in agreement
No, I
with
mean,
Sam
I
at
agree
all.
with everything you're saying. And part of the reason why, like, this chasm started between me and, you know, Hasan is very influential. So when he decides that somebody is an enemy of the movement for criticizing him, which is what I perceive happened, then it kind of becomes reality.
all the
For
way up until
example,
the context
criticism of
nuke.
Is
didn't know the
him not
depravity.
supporting Kamala Harris. Now, would she have stopped the war and been like a perfect dove? I don't know, but I know she would have been better than Trump. I know that for sure. Trump's posting like this insane Riviera, Gaza, the Riviera with Trump hotels. I mean, that's and like he's sending the 20-pound bombs. He's telling Netanyahu, you
They're
have a blank
watching
check to
in
do whatever
here
you
as well.
want.
They're watching me
Now,
as well.
Like, would
it just came out that Biden didn't, did nothing to. I mean, listen, I think.
Well, I'm talking about Kamala.
I suspect that
We don't know. We don't know what Kamala would have done.
I suspect.
Like, sure, it'll be marginally better, but we don't know.
She would not have had the same policies as Trump. But at the same time, I think that it was a massive failure, both on a real human level. Like, it would have, I think, had she articulated anything even remotely close to what I would hope
And
her
that was
difference
her
would have
failure.
been.
That's the
I
reason
think
why
it
she
would have
lost.
probably
That was my point.
had implications in
Not
the election, but I
decoupling
think
from Biden's
perhaps even
dangerous
more importantly,
genocidal Gaza policy,
it
not
would have
not removing herself, not
maybe,
severing her ties from Biden early
implicated
on.
the
That was my
behavior of
major
Israel.
point of
So,
contention with the Kamala
I mean,
Harris
look,
campaign, and that's what led her to lose.
I chose to support Harris because I perceived her as the lesser of two evils, but
Yeah, me too. And I think that that's an important
can
distinction to
certainly
make at a time like
understand-
this. Yeah.
I can certainly understand
He
how
doesn't understand
some people
Sam's position.
were just so repulsed by what was happening that it made it almost impossible for them to vote for Harris. I think, you know,
I understand why they didn't. I totally understand the perspective. Like, I'm so disillusioned with this administration, I can't support Kamala. But at the same time, like, a hugely influential political
He told
streamer like
people
Hassan,
I
who has
never
who
told
has
people not to
huge
vote for
influence
Kamala.
on people, I think,
I
and who's
never
someone
told
who,
people
you know,
not to
was
vote
at
for
the,
Kamala Harris. That is a lie.
who's very vocal about being pro-Palestine. I feel like it's an abdication of responsibility to be like, I'm not voting for Kamala, or I'm not telling you who I voted for. I suspect he voted for Jill Stein personally.
I hate Jill
But
Stein.
either way, he hasn't said, and he wouldn't endorse her. Now, like, if you're just like a random protester or whatever, and like you're like, I'm so disgusted, I don't want to vote, that's fine. But if you're like a high-level political streamer, and you know, basically, you have the capacity to weigh like the lesser of two evils and what that means, I feel like it's an abdication of responsibility to not make that call.
I mean, you know, I certainly have been critical of people who, you know, generally don't vote for the lesser of two evils. But I think, you know, and certainly, you know, in the run up to the 2016 election, I certainly that was my perspective. But again, you know,
I don't know why he lies about this.
What the Biden administration was doing was so horrific that her inability.
Yes, of course
to,
he's using Sam to try and
signal that
trash
there would
talk
be
me by
any
fucking
change.
lying.
You know, I think
I literally have made
sometimes you have to take this at face
numerous
value.
videos about Jill Stein
I think there
sucking.
would be certainly
just
definitely
fucking
other
lies.
things. You would not be assaulting the government
Why does
like
he lie about
like
this?
Trump
it's
is.
such a basic,
but,
easy to comprehend principle.
I think probably this is the first election in as long as I've been doing
Hassan
this,
keeps
and I
saying
think
you're
it's
lying.
been
He
5
is, he is
elections now.
lying.
I mean, I'm old.
Why
that
does he lie
I
about
couldn't
this?
really
I voted on stream.
condemn someone from taking that
I never
position
told people to vote for Jill Stein. I
based
told
upon
people
what
not
we were
to vote
seeing.
for Jill
This
Stein.
is-
I told
It's
people
not
not
just
to vote
some
for
random
Donald Trump.
person.
I said
I
Donald
do,
Trump was
and
gonna,
I'll tell you
of course,
why.
be worse than Kamala Harris.
Kamala
But
Harris
it was up to
wanted a
them
ceasefire.
to make
She
that
stated
decision
that.
on their
Trump
own.
said finish them. I mean, let's be honest.
Oh my
like for
God.
someone like
Biden said,
Hassan,
I want a
They're
ceasefire
I'm not voting
too.
for
too.
Biden.
This
I'm not
is
talking
No,
about
I
Biden.
understand, but we
Drama
found out
thing.
that Biden, in fact, did nothing to bring that about. So,
Well,
like,
you can talk about Biden. I'm talking about Kamala Harris. What
well,
she
but she's-
said.
I mean,
Well, she's the vice president. I mean, at the end of the day, she doesn't really do that much, right?
No. But I'm talking about the candidate. Biden, as a president,
Kamala says she do
said he
nothing
wanted a
different than Biden.
ceasefire.
What is
She
he
as a
talking about?
candidate
He's
said,
not
I want a
equipped enough to
ceasefire.
have
Do
this
not, even
conversation.
if you're like, I don't know how much
He
I
is
trust
not
them.
knowledgeable
One's
enough to
like, I want
have
a
an
ceasefire, and the
adult
other one is
conversation
like,
on this.
finish
I'm
them.
sorry. It's obvious.
Well, listen,
he doesn't know what he's talking about.
I think it
And he's
was,
lying on top of
certainly
that.
obvious to me that Trump was going to be worse. But I think, like, if you're trying to get the candidate
pee.
to
I'm doing a pee break.
show some
Fuck.
indication of this, I can understand that. I mean, I wouldn't do it. I would disagree with it. But
Yeah, and I get your
I'm
point too.
not-
Like, ultimately, I understand why people wouldn't want to support them because of what they've seen, and like that, it feels like it feels like
it also shows a tremendous amount of just like electoral malfeasance on her part. I mean, they made an active choice. And I think, you could have put that Palestinian lawmaker from Georgia on stage. They made an active choice to signal to whomever they were signaling that they weren't going to do anything. Now, I happen to believe that she would have been better on this than Trump, but they were making an active choice to do that. I mean, it was really electoral malfeasance on her part, in my opinion. But I don't know what the point of litigating this is per se, but
Well, we're talking about kind of my criticisms of Hassan and how this.
I don't.
Well, let me show you this.
I don't
I
really
know.
care.
Yeah,
about,
I know.
Honestly, I'm like
Let me show you this. This is
I'm
more.
Not, I don't. I honestly. Like,
Yeah, you don't care. I know.
I don't care. I don't.
And why should you? I don't blame you. We talked about anti-Semitism, and you think that I don't want to put words in your mouth, right? But you seem to have conveyed that, compared to the destruction and everything happening, the genocide, the loss of life in Gaza, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, that obviously that's way more important. So let me show you an example of something. And again, I know you don't care about the drama. To me, this isn't drama. This is one of the biggest, most influential streamers spreading something that I think is really dangerous. And you can agree or disagree, but it's a short clip, but I'll show it to you. And you tell me what you
It's
think.
clip chimped. This will never happen, but in a totally just world, any kind of, regardless of your background, any kind of Zionist tendency should be treated in the same way as being a rabid neo-Nazi. And you shouldn't even let someone be the local dog catcher as Felix was posting.
Yep.
If they've ever exhibited any sort of like positive feelings about the state of Israel. I'm so serious about this.
Now, by the way, he didn't misspeak. He doubled down on it yesterday. He said, no, I agree. That's what I think. Now, just to recap, he says, anyone
Look at
that's
him
had positive
shaking. What the
feelings at
fuck?
any point about the state of Israel is a neo-Nazi that's not fit to be a dog walker. Now, to me, that seems like extremely dangerous, dehumanizing language about what could arguably be 70% of the Jewish diaspora, and certainly probably people in your family.
I'll tell you. There's some hyperbole there, but
That's
I
putting it
would
mildly.
think-
I don't want my
he
Zionist
says
family members to be
Zionism,
in office either.
And I'll tell you
No,
what I think is really.
sorry,
no,
I got to correct you. He says Zionism, and then he says if you had positive feelings about the state of Israel at any point in your life.
Yeah.
I got
That's why
to
he
tell
says
you,
hyperbole.
if you look at what's happening right now, and you have positive feelings about Israel.
He said at any point in your life, Sam. Just to be clear, about what he said.
Don't try to.
Would I have said at any point in his life, someone's life? But I just think this is such a petty, like the idea that we're going to police. Let me respond. You want me to respond to this?
No,
like I say, I don't care about this, but if you're going to force me to respond to it, what Israel is doing right now is so far beyond the idea that someone says any time in your life or not or whatnot. He's talking about Zionism, and frankly, I think it's very difficult for me.
Maybe Sam needs more context to see how vitriolic Hasan is.
Understand how someone could have positive feelings at this time. Now, you want to say in the past and what? Okay, like I say, I will grant you at any time in your life that is
That's not what I said.
too broad a step. But wait, let me finish.
Yeah.
But see, you go in and you're making this about anti-Semitism by doing this hopscotch about
They're sending skulls to the man's
a
house.
poll
Who's
that
doing
people
it?
had
Not me. I
positive
would never do
feelings that
that.
Jewish people do, and then therefore he is anti-Semitic. And honestly,
I literally
that
said,
type of
regardless of your
conflation,
background,
I think, is so dangerous and so disingenuous. I mean, I don't want to get too passionate about this, but I will tell you something. I have had a guy who went to my bar mitzvah, my sister's bar mitzvah, my kid's bar mitzvah, sat at Passover with me 3 or 4 times,
called his
call my
dad
father
to
and
see
ask
if he
him
was
if I'm
anti-Semitic.
anti-Semitic. Now, this is just one, that is just an example, an illustration of conflating what he's clearly talking about Zionism. Was it hyperbole to say any time in life, whatever? The fact of the matter is this conflation is dangerous for Jews.
Yes.
It is a fig leaf and a way of weaponizing
that's why I said regardless of your
anti-Semitism
background.
that has enabled Donald Trump to do the shit he's doing, that has enabled the slaughter of thousands upon thousands of children and women and men, for that matter. It is not keeping Israelis safe. And this type of conflation, Ethan, is what I find far more irresponsible, frankly, than the idea that he said positive any time.
He's right.
Look, you do a show
Sam,
4 hours a day.
no,
He does
Sam,
a show
you're
5, as far as I
nightmare.
can tell, 15 hours a day. And to focus in on that one tiny clause.
This is
of
not
that
one
sentence.
tiny clip, Sam.
Well,
you don't
but
know.
wait a
This is a
second.
totality of behavior.
But you
And
wanted
by
to
the
bring
way,
this
it's
up.
easy,
I don't
and I
care
appreciate
about
that you
Ethan.
can hand wave it away and say that it doesn't.
No, I'm not hand waving it away.
Well, you kind of are.
I'm saying this
You're saying it doesn't.
inflation.
You're saying
This
actually
inflation.
I'm wrong for caring
You
about
know
it.
exactly what I
Well,
mean
yes,
there.
In fact, I'm saying this
Yeah.
conflation is incredibly dangerous.
Yes.
It is disingenuous.
I think it's dangerous
right now,
to
there is,
ignore
there-
I
what's
always
being
stress
described
the
as
importance of
dehumanizing
decoupling
violent language for
Judaism,
American
Jews, and
Jews.
Israel.
That have nothing to do
Always.
with the
that
war.
is a complete mischaracterization of
It's-
And that
that.
is
it's
what's
not.
dangerous.
He
He's
never
not
says the
fit to be a
word
dog
Jews.
walker.
He never says the word
He
Jews.
says a neo.
Listen, how many members of Kufi have positive feelings
exactly.
towards
Let me
Israel?
see.
How
I mean,
many, how many
Christians
millions
that are
of
pro-Israel
members of
than there are
Kufi,
Jews around
the
the world.
Christian
Yes.
organization,
Thank you.
have
Thank
positive
you for
feelings for
doing
Jews?
this.
It is clearly not a function of their Judaism. It is
Right.
not a function of their Judaism, and so it is
But it
not
describes
specifically.
most Jews.
Perhaps these people
No,
will
no,
not
no.
Yes, it
finally
does,
understand.
It describes most Christian evangelicals too.
It may do them too, but it also describes
Okay,
73%
so
of
that
Jews.
is not anti-Semitism. That is
Well,
about
I don't know.
a
What do
belief.
you call it when somebody's discriminating against the vast majority of a racial or religious group, Sam?
If
I'm
they were-
sorry. You want to look at evangelical Jews?
I
You
don't
can say
care
he's
about
anti-Christian
evangelical
too.
people. I'm
Okay, but I'm talking about the way you're constructing this.
I think
and so
you're-
you can say the same thing about Christian Christian evangelicals too. It is not
I
anti-Semitism.
wouldn't be able to have this
It is
conversation
not.
because Ethan would
It
just be
just
like, "You're a
isn't.
Jew hater.
Taking
You're a Jew
one
hater. You're a Jew
example
hater."
in
He can't do that to
isolation, which is
Sam.
what we've done here.
Well, you're the one who gave it to me.
Yeah, well,
I don't even
well,
want to talk about
fundamentally,
it,
I
but
disagree
I'm
with
using
you.
your example, and in that instance, that is not anti-Semitism.
Well, I
And this
disagree.
Conflation. Okay, well, that's our disagreement.
Yeah.
But I think that conflation is incredibly dangerous.
Well, I
It's
disagree
dangerous
as well
for
on that.
Jews.
I think-
it's dangerous for this society.
Why would he?
I think,
even
frankly,
claim to be
I think it's
anti-Zionist after
dangerous
this? Why would he claim to be
to what I
pro-Palestine after this?
perceive as hand waving what is happening here. I know you said you aren't doing
I'm
that.
not hand waving. This
Yeah,
is
no,
this
you're
is a
doing the
function
opposite. You're
of
endorsing-
decades
Yeah.
of decades of thought about this.
So right, sure. But the point is, you're saying that this is not dangerous. How dare you care about this? I think it's dangerous
No, I'm not saying that at all.
I personally, I mean,
I'm
Jewish
saying
people
the
have a collective
mischaracterization
memory of
of it
trauma,
as
Sam, and it
anti-Semitism.
starts a
What are you
certain
saying?
way, and it
He's
starts
talking
with
about the
people.
Holocaust
It
now.
starts with
Just say it,
dehumanizing language, like saying
Oh
you're
my
not
God,
fit
he's
to
talking
walk
about-
a
he's
dog.
invoking the
I mean, what are we
Holocaust.
what are we
He's
doing
not
here?
talking
It's,
about
it's
Jews.
irresponsible language.
He's not talking about
He's
Jews.
talking about 73% of Jewish
no,
people.
No, you said that.
No, that's a poll that's readily available.
No, you made that connection. He did not. Because we have millions upon millions of members of Kufi. We have millions upon millions in this
that is
country
my
of
point. I say it all the
evangelicals
time.
who also believe the same thing.
Does your dad
and
have-
You cannot
would-
say it's
could you
anti-Semitism.
could you
You
describe
cannot
your-
say it's anti-Semitism if you're also including
If
millions
Ethan was
upon
brave
millions,
enough, he would
far
ask
more Christians
if he wants
than
his
Jews.
dad to be appointed to
Would
a
you say
local
that,
office, and Sam
your
would say
father,
no.
who you mentioned, said something to you that he's ever in his life had positive feelings about the state of Israel?
I've had positive feelings of Israel.
Well, does your dad have any positive feelings about it now?
I would assume so.
Not in terms of like I support them, but
I've
like
had
I think
positive
Israel.
feelings. I went to Israel on.
Okay, good. Then you're a neo-Nazi,
my
not fit to walk a
confirmation.
dog. How do you feel about
No,
that?
that's you saying that.
That's
that is not
literally
his
what he
saying.
said.
Thank
I'll play
you,
it
Sam.
again.
Thank you. I think like this will never happen, but in a totally just world, any kind of, regardless of your background, any kind of Zionist tendency should be treated in the same way as being a rabid neo-Nazi, and you shouldn't even let someone be the local dog catcher as Felix was posting if they've ever exhibited any sort of like positive feelings about the state of Israel. I'm so serious about this.
Another thing he's doing, by the way, and Hassan
Listen,
he
you can
plays
say
around with
that's
the
a
term
wrong thing to do.
Zionist, right?
You can say that's a wrong thing to say, but he's not talking about Jews.
Yes.
He's talking about people who have exhibited these positive feelings, and that includes millions upon millions of Christians.
Yes.
More Christians.
Okay, well,
listen, I don't
regardless of
think
your
the
background.
Nazi is not fit to walk dogs, either. I think
Yes,
it's
no
insane
local
language.
office
Listen,
positions.
you don't want to tell me that you have never engaged in hyperbole. You and I both are in this
It's not
business,
just
and
a-
we do that.
Yeah, you're right. I just think that
It's listen. You can
I-
say
I
it's
just
an
think that,
inappropriate
like,
thing to say. It's an unfair thing to say.
I just think like
but
Arabs
it's
that
not
support Israel aren't
anti-Semitism.
fit to walk a dog.
It is not anti-Semitism.
Okay, well, we're
And
at
you
an
can say
impasse
that
on
it-
this one.
No, the dog walker
Yeah,
is
so, I mean-
a local.
But
that
anyway,
was
another
it's
thing
a colloquialism that
Zionist
Felix
tendencies,
Biederman,
and he's
also
someone that
Jewish,
plays around
used.
with Zionism. He calls me a Zionist, and again, I know we're arguing here about semantics of what Hassan said, but I don't think that you could accurately characterize me as that, as it's used colloquially. You don't know, right? But he's saying Zionist tendencies. What does that mean? What's a Zionist tendency?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
going to
you
talk
can
to him
ask
on
me about
Friday.
it. I
You
can
can
tell
ask him
you.
what a Zionist tendency is.
Zionism
I
is
suppose
fascism.
I
That's
would
it.
guess, and like I've looked at polls too, where people have various different understandings
Why
of
is
what
he trying to debate
Zionism
me
is.
on this?
But I
Ethan,
think
stop
it
bringing
is
Hassan up so much.
my
Ethan is trying to
guess,
fight Hassan through
and
Sam
I don't know
absolutely
what he
beta
was
move.
thinking specifically.
Watch
but
Ethan back
the
away from
notion of
our
an
supposed
ethno-state
debate on Friday
that
now because now
that
he didn't get what he
engages
wanted
and
out of
allows
Sam.
Whatever in the name of,
This was
of
all
Zionism allows
preparation
this mass
to
slaughter.
fucking try and
I think
hit
is
me in the
horrific.
face.
Sure.
And he's
me
not
too.
able to. He's not able to extract. He's not able to extract what he wanted out of
The three of us
Sam.
agree on that regard.
Yeah, I think we're so. Another thing is like to take it even further. I mean, Hassan pretty much openly
Well, let's not
supports
talk
Hamas.
about Hassan. Let's talk about this.
Sure. I mean, what do you want to ask me?
Well, I mean, if you want to ask me about, I think
he's gonna back away now that he's not getting
Well,
what he
let
wanted.
me. I'm
not here to explore.
I have a list of things that.
Feelings, but if you want to talk about Hamas, I mean, I think look.
Well, how do you feel about Hamas?
I feel that Hamas, people can perceive it as a liberation organization. We call them terrorists in this country. We call the
What do
ANC
you think about
terrorists.
them, Sam?
Listen, I think there are parts, I would imagine,
Oh my
of
God, he's trying to get
Hamas
into condom
that have done
hummus.
good for the people in Gaza, and I think they have done bad things. But I sort of feel, I guess, ultimately probably like Ehud Barak when he said that were I Palestinian and I was living in Gaza, that it would be likely that I would join Hamas. I mean, that's what Ehud Barak said on multiple occasions, and I think that is
it's like
very
watching someone that has
is
the exact same opinion as I do,
an understanding of human nature.
saying it from a
That
perspective
you're
you
not
are
supporting
subject-
Israelis.
break
Just to
out.
point out an inconsistency
because he
there.
can't hit
How
him
so?
on this.
Well, you're not.
Because
You're like I don't. I
he's
refuse
supposed
to
to
understand
present
human
himself as
nature
someone
and
who
their
respects
reaction.
Sam Seder's
It's just
position.
evil, and I don't know how to explain it.
I didn't use the word evil.
Right. I'm inferring. I'm inferring because I asked you if
Answer
you
the
think they're
question,
evil, and you
listen,
didn't really answer that.
His audience
Listen,
thinks
I
they
avoided
voted
it.
on Sam Seder on this.
I don't know what Gazans felt on October 8th, but toward Hamas. But I can tell you that we have there is a long history of terrorist organizations or so-called terrorist organizations like the ANC or the IRA, even the PLO,
Now, Sam,
that ultimately become political organizations.
I think the
And
comparison to
when you-
Hamas
when-
to what happened in South Africa is insanely disingenuous, and I personally hate when people do that.
I mean, Mandela didn't
personally
think
hate
so.
it?
Well, Mandela did think so. He explicitly stated that he avoided committing violence on the citizenry because it would make reunification impossible.
Twice they asked
That's
Nelson
something he
Mandela,
said.
if
I
you
think
disavow
in the
violence, I will let
totality-
you go free.
listen,
In the
Twice he said,
by the way,
no,
Sam,
I will
in the
not disavow
totality
violence.
of their
You
campaign,
are wrong. You are
I think
wrong.
under 200 civilians died, and the people who did
You
kill civilians
are
were
wrong.
almost all held accountable for what they did.
Why
That's a
is
difference,
he lying
Sam.
about this?
Well, I mean, I can tell you that
A significant
Twice he
difference.
stayed in prison. His
well,
prison
it
sentence
is
was
a significant
extended.
difference. I mean, I imagine many of those people who committed atrocities on October 7th are dead now. And so
What does that have to do with
you could-
anything?
Well, that's accountability.
Being
But,
killed? Okay.
but-
I mean being held accountable by the party that they're presumably doing the violence on behalf. Like,
But you're saying the entire ANC was held accountable?
no, I was saying Nelson Mandela's party, if someone killed a civilian, they would hold them accountable. They would charge them. They would disavow their actions.
That's not true.
The ANC did.
Yes.
Well, the IRA was bombing places in England and throughout Ireland. I mean, we have even the Irgun or the Stern Gang when they killed, over 100
I would not compare
villagers
Irgun to the IRA, by the way.
in 1948. I mean, the history
That's
is
crazy.
full of examples of organizations that commit terrorist acts.
well,
Now,
people
I will
say-
tell you,
people look at South
personally,
Africa-
I do not condone
Nelson
the
Mandela's
killing
family, by
of
the way.
civilians, which is why obviously I'm upset about what Israel is doing.
Sure.
The
part that I don't like about people say, like, I feel like people sweep for Hamas by saying, like, what do you expect,
MK
right?
paramilitary
But
wing of the
truth
ANC
is that people
bombing campaign that killed
use
19
South
people,
Africa as an
wounded 200.
example, but what South Africa shows is that you don't need to commit a violent war
You're
against
wrong.
civilians
They were
to
violent.
liberate yourself.
They were violent.
Well, I mean, listen, we had
Oh my God.
for a year, we had the Great March of Return, where Sinwar himself was involved in that. There was Palestinians marching on a regular basis over the course of the year. I don't know how many it was, 50 or whatever, that were innocent people who went there, and
Nelson Mandela
snipers
was like,
are
as a
shooting
leader, he was
down
willing to use
unarmed
violence.
civilians. And so, time and time again, and over the course of the 20 years that I've been professionally,
That's the reason why he
covering
went to
this,
prison.
my attitude towards Israel's willingness to have peace has changed, and my understanding of it has changed. And I can only imagine how more intense that feeling is to be living in a place that is, functionally like, the Warsaw Ghetto,
Dude.
as far as like you don't have access to resources, you have 50% unemployment, the apartheid that is taking place in terms of the West Bank. I mean,
I agree with those characterizations, by the way, Sam. Just to say.
But I can't imagine that my response wouldn't be to pick up a weapon.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know.
It's not really working out.
Well,
Yeah, because
none of
Israel's
it's working
genociding.
out, is
No,
it? I
not
mean, because we have
much
the
at all.
Greatest,
Not really much at
what is
all.
called the greatest attack on Israelis in 75 years. The notion of Zionism and the way that Israel is organized as a society is not protecting Jews.
Well,
it's not protecting Israelis. It's not protecting Jews worldwide. It is, there may have been a time where Zionism had and there were certainly proponents of Zionism in the early 20th century, in the late, perhaps late 19th century, where there was a notion of a multi-ethnic democracy that fell by the wayside. Folks like Hannah Arendt and Einstein, left the Zionist Congress, and what it has evolved into is, I think, a nightmare
Told you he was gonna do
for
Hannah
everyone
Arendt.
involved. And so, I don't know how I would react in.
I love using Einstein as
in
well.
that type of commiseration, frankly.
Well, can I ask you?
But again,
what are your-
Ehud Barak said that he would pick up a weapon were he one of them. And
That's fine.
He's
you
far
know,
closer
So
to
Sam is
the,
a top secret weapon?
the
Ha ha,
conflict
bro's
than
not
I
I'm
am.
not saying I don't understand why people pick up weapons, right? So,
I'm
so
actually
let me ask
impressed
you
with
this:
how
what do you think
Ethan
about
is
October
doing.
7th attack?
What do I think about it?
Yeah.
I mean, it was horrific.
And this was like a military action by Hamas to what end?
I mean, I suspect. I mean, I don't know what the strategy was. I mean, they attacked 2 military bases. I don't
he's
know
gonna
if
do the
they
rape
were
stuff.
aware.
He's gonna hit the rape stuff now, probably.
That the dance.
The Nova rave.
Yeah, I don't know if they knew that rave was happening. I suspect it was to derail the Abraham Accords, which were going to leave the Palestinians out of the equation, where an authoritarian
You leave out that they
monarchy state.
attacked kibbutzim, by the way.
No, yes, of course they did. But I'm saying that they. I don't know what the strategy was on their part.
So what do you think? Like, would you expect the response of Israel would be to that?
I had no doubt on that day that Israel was going to respond.
Go insane.
I mean,
Yeah, right. It was going to be horrific. We all knew.
yes, but I think I think the lack of proportionality was just beyond. Frankly, and I was aware that this was going to be a horror show, but I don't think I had the level of awareness of what they would do to go in and literally level it, destroy what is it, 80-90% of the structures in Palestine, bomb
I'm gonna show
hospitals
this as well.
that they would use.
Well, Hamas did know that because that's why they attacked.
Food as a weapon.
I'm more interested in the justification for what they're doing.
Probably
there.
took hostages with the idea that they would be able to negotiate.
I understand why they took hostages. I don't understand why they took children and elderly.
I believe that they probably. I mean, this is all conjecture on my part. That they would be able to trade them as a way to inhibit Israel's doing what they're doing, and I don't know if they could have even imagined that. I'm not going I'm not going to endorse Hamas's strategy here.
Well, I'm just trying to flesh it out here
don't
because
either.
this is what I'm getting to is Hamas. I think they knew that this was the reaction that would happen. You know?
I can't imagine that they
It's an act of desperation,
assumed that this
born
was,
out of
there would be
Israel's
this
endless
level
cruelty.
of destruction.
I mean, that's why they hate Israel. I don't think they
would have been
underestimate how violent the IDF can be. You know what I mean? That's why they attacked.
I certainly underestimated that they would go this far. Use
I didn't think they'd go this far, but
bomb hospitals.
Okay, so what the f are you defending Israel and the Zionist project in any capacity, Ethan?
Have rules of engagement
Hamas
like this.
thought that Israel would have a semblance of humanity
think
for its
Hamas
own
is
hostages. They
certainly,
were wrong. How was that anybody else's fault other than Israel?
Criticism for their strategy here. If
think that's
what
an
you're trying to-
understatement.
Ethan is blaming the genocide of Palestinians on Hamas once again.
Well, I mean, they're a terrorist
classic
organization
way to try and
that
defend
intentionally
Israel.
antagonized like the idea of
made
to
him
come
do it.
mass
They antagonized
slaughter their
Israel.
civilians.
I think that if they overestimated whether Israel cared about the hostages, without a doubt. I mean, there's.
I'm really disappointed
I
in
don't know
Sam.
that there would be anybody who would make a case that this
Oh my God,
was
his
their
entire
plan
community is like full-blown
to
Zionists,
have
I
Israel
think.
respond
I mean,
in this way.
they're-
That's absurd.
Oh
Well,
my
and
God.
the same is true of like I guess Israelis feel the same way. Like it was totally
There's
unprecedented.
no shot. They're
You know
literally
what
going. They're telling
so
Sam.
maybe they didn't think that their
They're
mission would
telling
be as
Unc he needs
successful
to
as it
shut
was
the
on the
fuck
other
up
hand.
and
I
learn
have
his
no
place.
doubt that they
Who are
they
you?
did not think that they would that they would have been able to overrun that. I mean, I think we were told that the
this is so much
technology
worse than I thought it
of
was gonna
Israel's
be.
fence, et cetera, was perfect and something we should emulate in this
Yeah.
country. I mean, Trump was all talking about that. So I have no doubt that Hamas underestimated.
Overestimated.
Or
Or overestimated the
underestimated
IDF. Yeah, I got you.
what
Yeah.
they would be able to,
Oh my God, it's
what
bad.
kind
I
of
didn't
destruction
know
they
it was
would
that
wreak,
bad, bro.
and they underestimated the violence that Israel would perpetrate on Gaza.
This
I don't
is
know
like
that anyone
incredible stuff.
could have
This is the
imagined that Israel
nicest someone
would
can be to
have
explain the
engaged in
situation.
this
And these
level
guys are just
of
going crazy. They're treating him
destruction
like they treat
and
me.
Immiseration and bombing churches and bombing hospitals and blowing up universities and destroying
is hard to listen
infrastructure.
to.
I mean, it's almost beyond belief.
So one thing that when I was talking to Hasan, and I'm just going to talk about his point. This is about him personally. When I asked him, because this is obviously the $1 million question, right? By the way, just there's not one public bomb shelter in Gaza.
You think that's a good
There's
point?
not one public bomb shelter in Gaza.
Oh no, he's doing hospital points. Oh,
Okay.
Sam's
I
gonna
just
cook
think
him.
that's interesting. Pretty
Yeah.
up, don't
What
you
would a
think?
3,000-pound bomb do to a bomb shelter? Do you think Israel would stop themselves from blowing up a bomb
I'm not
shelter?
sure. I'm
They
not sure
blow
I
up
understand the point.
hospitals.
Well, I mean,
Are
you
that
have-
Do you think anything would
stupid?
be standing anymore?
Well, bomb shelters are underground. I mean, they would
I
definitely be a
know,
lot
I've
safer.
seen what
Dude,
happened
they
to your
have
house.
2,000. They have bunker busters. They've used bunker busters on refugee
you say
camps.
there
They've
were
used
tunnels
bunker
under
busters on hospitals. Why the f*** they
built
stop
the
themselves
one,
from using it on a fucking bomb
the,
shelter?
The
even
first
have
one that they
water.
went
They don't
into,
have
they
concrete.
built it when they were occupying Gaza.
Are you and right? That's true of that one. But I mean, they have a vast tunnel network, obviously, as everybody knows. But I don't care. I don't want to
what
get
a
into the weeds on this.
stupid point.
The $1 million question is like, what can we do? Now, it's obviously insanely difficult
as
to say.
Americans, I think we can stop aid immediately. I mean, obviously, it's not going to happen under
I'm in
Trump.
favor of that.
Move on. Don't move on. Oh my God.
Okay, I
Yeah.
mean, good.
I mean, I just
I
think-
think we should call for all aid to be ceased, and I think we should stop protecting them in the
What
UN.
should have Israel done on October 8th, I guess? Like, what would have been an appropriate
kill-
response for their government?
Not kill Israeli citizens within the Gaza envelope. in a hope that
What should they have
Hamas
done,
could not hold them kidnapped.
on October 8th. I mean, I think that I think that there is
Concede to the positions of Hamas.
They're hitting strategic sites to attempt to take out leadership. They should have. But let's talk. To
Well, the
look at
leadership
that
was
moment-
underground.
Yeah, to look at that, that moment
Not
in
to a
history,
genocide,
like
I
maybe
think.
it was.
I
way to
disagree
start.
because they
Listen,
had to
listen,
do something.
Maybe in that moment,
Why are there
they had to go in and bomb or whatever they do. I think that any action that they would have taken at that point, frankly, was a function of literally decades of oppressing people and attempting to bring this to an eventuality.
Right.
I mean, this was.
I can't believe-
And so what should they have
I
done?
can't believe his audience
ages ago.
legitimately and Ethan
Well,
thought
I mean,
that
You're
avoiding-
like Sam
yeah.
would agree with.
Okay, I think
them
what they
and
should have
not
done
me. It
Yeah.
is
is
so
begun
shocking.
empowering
Anyone who's knowledgeable on this
Palestinians
issue
in
that
the
isn't
West. They should have
brain
done
broken
This is
the
my
from
same-
favorite
Zionism
answer,
is
Sam.
100%
You're
going
saying
to
that
have these
this
exact
is what
same
Hassan told me.
opinions.
They
What the
should their government and lift the borders in response to the worst terrorist attack that's ever happened?
I think honestly, when you see that your policies have failed, but I don't think this
You
was
actually
their
don't believe
agenda.
that that's a real thing, though. I'm interested in having like a real conversation. You can't like live in a fairy tale land where, in response to the worst military or terrorist attack of all time, Israel, who's already, as you state, like genocidal and racist and all these terrible things, is going to lift their borders and disband their government.
Well, wait a second. You're asking me what they should have done, and that's different.
No, in a
from
realistic
what I
way, not in a
expect them to
fairy
do.
tale, Sam.
Well, listen, there is no realistic thing. Their agenda has been, it has been quite clear. Their agenda has been, since Ariel Sharon walked on the Temple Mount and tried to scuttle peace talks, the agenda since the assassination of Rabin by arch Zionists in Israel, the agenda has been to bring about this moment. There is no doubt about it. The annihilation of the Palestinian people has been an agenda in Israel for far too long. So from the perspective, it's anything I say is fantastical relative to what they would actually do. Anything.
There's nothing they could have done that because of the situation, anything they would have done would have been.
Poor Israel, man.
There was no plan that on this day they were going to do this.
I feel so
But
bad
if
for
you go
Israel
back
for
10 or 15
76 years of
ago
apartheid. They
and
just had
look
no other
into
option but to do
Bibi Netanyahu's
genocide.
brain,
That is the
idea
logical
that this is
conclusion of
ultimately
Ethan's
going
argument,
to
by the way.
happen
That is how
was
crazy this
definitely
is.
the agenda.
What, in terms of like
Find a
attacking
way-
Gaza or inciting
Find
an
a
attack?
way, I would imagine both, frankly. But to find a way
kind of-
to eliminate the Palestinians, this has been the agenda of at one time
Keep
what I think
collecting those
was
W's,
a
Ethan. Wait, oh
smaller
my
segment
God.
of the Israeli body politic, and I think has increasingly become an even larger portion of the Israeli politic. So, I mean, anything I say in terms of should is fantastical. Anything.
So yeah, okay. I mean, so this is like I understand where you're coming from, right? Like
There was an opportunity for a ceasefire that was called in November, in December. They could have held a ceasefire at any point, and the amount of killing would have been far less. They could have done that. They could have ended it after a week.
I mean, Hamas could have ended the war anytime too.
How could have Hamas ended the
By
war?
by releasing the hostages?
No, listen, Israel has said time and time again that release of the hostages is not going to end their assault on Gaza. They have said this over
I don't believe
and
that's-
over and over.
I haven't
They
seen
have
those
said-
statements.
You don't
I've seen the
believe
opposite.
facts?
I believe
because
that
you're
if
delusional.
You really haven't seen those
Well,
statements?
No, I haven't. I'll review
They
them.
just
I mean,
released
it
this
depends
statement
when
last week. They
it
said
depends
we
when they
won't.
were made
Why
too,
are
right?
there
Like
hostage
what's in
family
response
protests
to
in
it?
Israel, Ethan,
Anytime.
is because
Anytime
the
they could
Netanyahu
have-
government
What if
doesn't
Hamas
want to release the
done that
hostages
in
because
the
they want to keep
world?
using the hostages as a reason to keep bombing Gaza because they want to ethnically cleanse the Gaza population. They want to ethnically cleanse the Gaza Strip.
Not
You are so stupid.
coming into Gaza.
Why are
I
you
mean,
so
there's
stupid?
just-
You don't understand
to
anything.
That's not
defend
true.
Israel's
my
actions.
God.
That didn't happen
That's
either.
being inevitable.
Oh my God.
Like, when do you think they should have ended it? When do you think they should have ended it?
So who have ended what?
You've asked me the question, what should have Israel done? You
Yeah.
tell me what they should have done. Do you think what they've done is right?
Well, what do you? I've clearly stated no, Sam.
Okay, so tell me what they should have done.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, hindsight is
Is messaging
a
him right
beautiful
now, by the
thing.
way?
But
Oh, dude.
in my opinion, like you said, I think some more specific strikes. I think more moving slowly because, as you kind of
just a slower
pointed out, but
genocide.
didn't really acknowledge.
When
is
do you
that
think they should have
Do
ended?
you want me to answer?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the leadership is obviously underground. So it's going to be a long mission of trying to get them. It's going to be a difficult mission. But I think militarily, they probably have some obligation to their citizenry, at the very least, to like take out but we're ignoring the fact that missiles are being shot into Israel nonstop. And I know you're going to say, Iron Dome stops most of them, which is true. But at the same time, I mean, a country needs to respond to that. They can't just allow missiles
be
to be
clear
shot
to
in.
me. Tell me the non-fantastical version of what they should have done. Should it have been 2 weeks, 3 weeks? How many Hamas leaders, how many members of Hamas should they have killed before they leave? Because we know that Blinken said on his way out that virtually every Hamas member of Hamas that they've killed has probably been replaced by someone who's lost a family member or an entire family or whatnot. So you tell me, Ethan, if you're the one with the sensical perspective on this, and mine is fantastical, what should they have done that would have been appropriate in your mind?
Yeah. So besides like special operations and stuff, I think it would have been a good idea to, I think there's a space where they could like try to find peace partners in Gaza before destroying the whole thing. Like obviously they approached it completely wrong, right? But there are ways I think that could have happened that are realistic, like trying to forge some kind of
the
peace
principal
partnership, some kind of
negotiator,
alliance,
who had never
some
actually
kind of
held a fucking
international
weapon.
coalition.
They killed him at Tehran. This is ridiculous.
They were marching in the Great March of Return week after week after week.
Sam, was there
after
Hamas
week.
activity at the Great March?
Sinwar was marching. Sinwar was marching with them.
Were people attacking the border wall?
During the Great March of Return, the first dozens of these things before the snipers, no, they weren't. So there were the people for peace.
Hamas activity at the Great
There
March
was
of Return.
Hamas activity. They were attacking the fence. They were like trying to cross the border.
They were
But not
attacking
militants.
My
Militants
God.
were trying to cross the border.
That's not
You're telling me that in the first dozen of these
Ethan
marches,
is
there were
now
people attacking the
functionally
fence?
defending
Correct.
sniping like paramedics at the Great March of Return, for the record. That's what he is de facto
But I mean,
defending.
again,
Sniper rifles.
I think that there's a way for Israel to try. I think they can obviously pursue peace. The way
Please
that they're
don't
doing
go
it is
there.
impossible, right? Like it's fucked up. It's insane. It's genocidal. It's horrific.
They're not pursuing peace.
I'm not saying.
They're not
I'm saying the
pursuing peace.
opposite.
I don't
Sam.
think Israel is
Well, you
pursuing
asked me
peace.
what should they have done. I mean, obviously
Yes.
they're not. They're not pursuing peace. I agree with you. Like quite the opposite. That's not what they're doing. But I'm saying there could have been a path, although it's not. It's. I think, unfortunately, I think their response was inevitable based on everything that happened.
You think it was inevitable that they would kill these many people and they would use food supplies as a weapon, that they would have leveled hospitals and universities and 80–90% of the homes? I mean, how
I don't know to what extent, but like a huge response was definitely inevitable. I'm not justifying it, Sam. You asked me a question. I'm answering it. You're putting this on me like I'm saying.
No. I'm just saying inevitability. I wonder
right here.
what you must think of an Israeli body
Sam had all the
politic
history and
where
context
this
of
level
Ethan's
of
points.
atrocity is inevitable.
Well, you described your and Hamas's understanding of the IDF. I wouldn't say that.
Sam is a
I can't say to what
self-hating Jew?
extent,
What the
but you
fuck?
agree that a huge response was inevitable.
I listen. I believe a response that was inevitable by Israel, and that is because I have a much more
There's some
theoretically jaded
crazy takes
view
in this chat.
of that country and their agenda, I think, than you. But to expect that what they've done is inevitable.
To
you
what?
can't
Well, Sam,
think-
I'm
I mean,
saying-
I just wonder what it is that you think is in that body politic. Listen, I don't think it's inevitable, just to use an example in this country. I don't think that it's inevitable that we are going to be deporting and disappearing, immigrants in this country. I think it's possible, but my perspective on America is still
There's
too
crazy takes in
optimistic
here
to
too.
think that's inevitable.
Yeah, of course there's
I can't
crazy
even
takes in here.
imagine
Like you, chum guzzler.
what
You came
I
in
would
here.
think would be
It's not
inevitable.
locked.
And I think
all you need to do is follow for 10
our
minutes.
invasion
His
of
chat
Iraq
is all
and the
fucking paid members and
complete lack of
subscribers.
caring and
Don't you think that there's a major difference there?
the
I
only
don't
thing that would even
safeguard
mitigate
myself
that
from the
is,
opinions
there
of
was-
people like
there
you,
were no
cum
images
guzzler
coming out
22.
of Iraq,
Okay.
or very few. And
Yeah, no
and
shit.
Certainly, I was exposing them more than the American population writ large.
Ethan's chat is members only.
To perceive what we did in Iraq as inevitable.
It's a different situation. That's completely, I mean, that was completely unpredictable. But we kind of touched on it. Where
No,
Hamas, and again, to what end this even matters is it doesn't ultimately. But Hamas knew that they were going to bomb the fuck out of Gaza.
Listen, I would imagine Hamas thought there was going to be a response, but they wouldn't have taken hostages if they thought that they couldn't use those hostages.
Of course,
as a way
they thought they could. I don't deny that. Yeah.
Of deterring Israel from entering, and that was a miscalculation on their part. They presumed that Israel was more interested in those hostages, I think, than they had assumed.
Well, and that's part of what a lot of the civil unrest in Israel is about, is that a lot of people do care about the hostages and think that the government needs to stop the war and focus on getting the hostages back and not killing innocent civilians. So that
I wonder about that last
Sam
part.
Cedar, what a fucking nightmare with Ethan saying
which
it.
part?
The part about the killing of innocent civilians. I think that
I said that's what they're doing.
No. I'm saying I wonder if the Israeli body politic.
Oh, you think the Israelis want civilians to die?
I think the Israelis. Obviously not all Israelis.
There's definitely
but
a lot
I think that
there are definitely a lot of Israelis that do want the Israeli civilians to die, and certainly the Gazan civilians to die as well.
To maintain this government.
Yes.
Believe
that's what the polls
that,
say. Ethan loves his polls when he's talking about Zionism.
That their lives have no value, that they are all future enemies, that they that they all represent the threat to Israel. And I think that's...
yes, Sam, speak for everyone.
I think that's...
They're so mad at Sam Cedar. They literally...
A twisted perspective.
Before this conversation took place, I need you to understand, their subreddit was talking about how Ethan should Sam Cedar me, because they thought that Ethan and Sam Cedar would be in agreement with one another. And now calling him a self-hating Jew.
So I characterizing like the majority of the public as wanting to kill civilians is a little sick, personally. But
I feel Ethan is far less extremist.
I'm basing this on conversations with.
You feel that way because he was trying to present himself in this conversation as someone who is actually pro-Palestinian in an effort to use that agreement with Sam against me on Friday. And even then, it unfolded pretty quickly when he got a little bit of pushback, not realizing that Sam has Sam has opinions almost identical to mine on this issue, because that's what every well-read person on this matter would think if they have a fucking humanity.
Certainly, they want hostages, and again, not all Israelis. But look, I can make analogous assessments of the United States at various times about things that reflect poorly on our national body politic as well. But the proof is in the pudding.
Can I tell you something? 300,000 protesters in Tel Aviv, 200,000 in the rest of the country. That's 500,000 people out in the street protesting the government of a country that has like 6 million or 5 million in the.
Are you talking about the protests about the judiciary?
I'm talking about the.
That's what he's talking about. Those weren't
to release the hostages.
No, the hostage protests
to release
weren't that
the hostages.
Big. Yeah, but even I don't think the hostage protests were that big. But it doesn't matter. It was pretty large. But those people literally still turned around and, according to the polls, said they want the violence to continue in Gaza. They just want to stop it for now.
Or they were calling for a release of the hostages.
Well, what do you mean? What's the point of telling Hamas to release the hostages? Yeah, of course it's a ceasefire, Sam.
Well, but Israel has to, and I know I'll look this up.
Deal with this.
I don't have
500,000 Israel.
Wait. Let's look this up and see how many times the Israeli government has said return of the hostages will not end.
Sam, I'm responding to you saying the majority of Israelis want civilians to die. 500,000 people came to the street for a ceasefire of a country of 5 million, Sam. That's 10%.
Israel just broke the latest ceasefire. Okay, where is the political response from the Israeli people? I mean, the idea
is this Israelis
that
or Israeli
Gazans
Jews?
Can be held responsible for an election that happened 18 years ago.
Sam, you said the majority of Israelis want civilians to die.
I think the majority of Israelis do not have a problem with what's going on in Gaza. That is my opinion.
I think that unfortunately might be
30th.
true to the extent that they've gotten
Well, then we agree.
they've gotten
Not
much
gone
more
far enough,
radical.
39% to
Unfortunately,
34%.
tragically, everybody's been a lot more radicalized since
That's
October
what I'm-
7th.
that's what
and
I'm
that's
saying.
tragic. I agree. I think people in Israel are jaded and they're cynical and they don't care, like you said, and I think it's tragic.
Yes. Well, that's what my contention was. I mean,
Yeah, so
I'm
why
looking
are
at
you
something
defending
from
that,
May.
Ethan?
I wouldn't say most of them want to kill civilians, though.
Well, I think that they don't.
And
care.
I wouldn't say that there isn't a sizable portion of of Israeli citizenry that want a ceasefire. When 500,000 people, Sam,
Dude, Ethan should
marched
talk to
out
an
on the
Israeli
street of a
anti-Zionist.
country of
It will
5 million
probably melt
for a
him.
ceasefire.
Okay. Ethan
This
should
Pew
talk to
research,
like a Messervot
39%
guy
say
or Dr.
Israel's
Ofer
military response
Kasef.
against
He
Hamas
will
in Gaza has
literally
been about
melt
right.
on the spot.
34%
He
say
should
not
ask
gone far
an
enough.
Israeli anti-Zionist,
Now,
an
granted,
Israeli
that
Jew
was
who's an
in,
anti-Zionist, what their take is on Israeli
May
society,
of this
because they
past
say
year.
some fucking
So,
way,
maybe
they say
that's
way worse
changed.
shit about their own
I would
country.
hope. But you know, that's all the most
Yeah, it's
recent
horrible.
Or
data.
maybe he should talk
Yeah,
to
no,
a therapist.
I know.
Honestly, I don't know why he's doing all this.
that the
because
sentiment
if
there-
it's going the way
40%
he
last
thought
year
it
said
was,
that Israelis should govern the Gaza Strip.
I know that people.
I don't know what's left now.
Yeah, I agree. It's tragic what's happened because I agree with you that they've become jaded and they've become very comfortable with the idea of violence happening there in general, right? And I think it sucks. I think it sucks is an understatement. I think it's tragic and like I don't know what. Truthfully, the situation is so fucked up that like
yeah, it's just really
it
fucked
just
up.
feels hopeless sometimes. But
Well, I
It
guess you're
certainly
conceding.
does. But in the meantime, in this country, and we may not have the opportunity for a while, but we should cease all aid to Israel. We should stop protecting them in the UN. We should stop trying to pressure the ICJ and the ICC, and that's
well, incidentally, I agree with all those things too. I think
do
that's
you?
the most we can do as a country to try to stop
what
the
do you
war.
disagree
and
with
it's
me on,
something
Ethan?
that we should be
I mean,
doing.
there are some significant
you know,
disagreements,
and,
even that you brought
I think
up in
Kamala
this
Harris would have been a
conversation.
lot more likely to do something on that front. Certain
we won't know.
we can't know, and that's the
no.
great thing.
Well, listen, I appreciate the time. I gotta go because I'm
Absolutely.
supposed to have dinner for my child. But,
Well, I'll say this. This was way more combative than I expected. Ultimately, though, I don't think that we... what do we disagree on? I mean, I don't know. I don't even know. Maybe I see too much good in the Israeli population. I mean, I don't know
Dude,
what's
he's
the
trying
ultimately
to
the
get a clip.
disagreements
He's
here.
trying to farm it. See?
Well, I mean, look, I'm not. It's largely, in my mind, impossible to really fully assess. I mean, yes, there was a protest last year, 500,000 people who wanted the hostages back. And,
I thought you
Ceasefire.
would
know if
agree on
there's been-
everything.
Well, they wanted the hostages back. I don't know.
It's not a. It's
how
not a
we can-
magic wand. It's a ceasefire.
Yeah, and they got a ceasefire, and then the Israeli government broke it, and they.
Well, so hold on.
I don't
Our
see people
disagreements
pouring
is that
into the street.
I'm too optimistic about the Israeli
No,
Hey, listen,
citizenry.
I'm not here to adjudicate what.
I'm just trying to summarize our
conversation.
conversation. That's all.
No,
Well,
he's
I
just
mean,
trying to get a
you
clip.
summarize for you. I'll summarize for me. I think that, it is what it is. And I think I don't remember this conversation. We can put into AI and have it summarize it, but
I'll do that for you, and I'll let you know what it says.
All right,
Okay, we'll leave it to the robots.
Okay.
Sam, I do appreciate you calling in. I do value your input on all this, and I appreciate the conversation. I think it's good to have conversations like this, like open and honest, even if they're combative. And I think ultimately on the larger points we agree, but we managed to find things to fight about anyway, and that's what two Jews do, isn't it, Sam?
That happens. That's my understanding. Appreciate it. All right, take it easy, man.
Have a great time with your children at dinner there. Enjoy.
Ooh.
I will.
I mean, I'll have the convo now if he wants to, by the way. I'll talk to Ethan right now if he wants to. Oh, he said.
But okay.
He said that was way different than what I thought it was going to be.
I enjoyed that as a watcher.
Was I owned?
I don't think you were owned. I don't think anybody was owned. I think it was two people that are highly opinionated hashing it out. And I think I personally like when people do that.
Yeah.
I don't get turned off by the combativeness.
Thank God we're having this open, free discourse.
That's the half-Jewish part of me.
He tried to use this as an opportunity, thinking that he was going to actually agree with Sam Seder, that Sam Seder was going to be like, oh, wow, it seems like you're super pro-Palestine. Why are people calling you anti-Palestine? It seems like you might be getting attacked by anti-Semites. That's what he thought was going to happen, so he could use that clip on Friday. That was his big smoking gun, okay? I assumed that was his big smoking gun, or maybe he was going to try to bring Dan Saltman on or Destiny on in the hopes that I get banned, which I will, by the way. If Dan Saltman or Destiny appears on Friday when we have this conversation, if Ethan is still willing and able to do it, I will get banned. He knows that, which is precisely the reason why I assume he will try to bring them forward, just as I called this initially. Just as I called what was going to take place in this conversation initially. I'm telling you right now, if he tries to, oh my God, Sam Seder me, what a nightmare, with like a person that has been banned, I won't be able to have this conversation with him. I will have to exit out of this conversation because Twitch will absolutely ban me. I know for a fact. Okay? No, I already have. I've already talked to my Twitch rep. I did. Shut the up. I did already. I know. They said, no, you will get banned.